Get some analysis now from Errol P. Mendes. He is a professor of international and constitutional law at the University of Ottawa. Professor, is China using these men as leverage, and would convictions likely lead to a diplomatic agreement that would have these men sent back to Canada in exchange for the release of Meng Wanzhou?
From the time that they were arrested, what we are seeing is a form of continuous and, quite frankly, cruel hostage diplomacy. Essentially, what China wants is that there has to be some kind of a deal by which Meng Wanzhou is returned back to China, and then maybe there will be a discussion on how to release these two. So it's a form of hostage diplomacy at a very cruel level, because these two Canadians have been detained in very harsh conditions. Some would argue even a form of torture in over 830 days, many times without any of the lights being turned off. So this is something which I think countries around the world who deal with China have to be very careful, because their citizens could end up in the same sort of situation.
Yeah, and you talk about how cruel the conditions they are in. Compare that to the case of Meng Wanzhou in Canada, because her lawyers are actually making a human rights case that the arrest is politically motivated and cited by the U.S., but her rights are being maintained. For example, she can go outside. She just has a GPS tracker. Can you compare the cases here?
Well, if you look at how the Canadian judicial process is proceeding, she lives in a mansion. Yes, she does have to wear a bracelet to show where she is, but she has an army of lawyers who can argue on her behalf. All the evidence has been produced to show why Canada is engaging in this extradition process. Nothing has been detained from her in terms of evidence, whereas in terms of the two Michaels in China, they don't even know what evidence has been produced against them. Even their own lawyers are not allowed to talk to them about any details they know. And as you know, the first trial of Michael Spavor lasted only 2 hours in a secret trial, which even the diplomats from Canada were not allowed in, which is actually a breach of the international obligations that China has under the consular relations treaties with China.
So if China isn't going to allow diplomats in to see these Canadian men before the trial or even during the trial, I mean, what can Canada do?
Well, essentially what Canada has to do is to sort of talk to all its allies, but especially the United States, and say, look, you know, the extradition process was done at your request. We are following the rule of law in Canada. We have to follow it. Otherwise, we're basically following the Chinese example of the rule of the party, i.e. the Communist Party. So we are asking the United States and our allies to stand behind us. As you know, we have formed an informal agreement with 37 countries about this type of detentions, and we hope that over time there will be an international movement against this type of hostage diplomacy. Already countries like Australia has been basically suffering the same type of behavior by China. And what's to say that other countries who for example, have major problems with the way in which the Muslim population in Xinjiang is being treated, could they be facing repercussions if any of their diplomats or their people vote against or speak out against China's treatment of the Uyghurs? So this is an international issue. It's not only a Canadian issue, not only an issue with Canada and the United States, but I think it's for the whole world.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the great danger is that China will extend these types of coercive actions to citizens of other governments that it falls out with. You mentioned Australia. My former colleague, Chung Lei, is being held in Beijing on espionage charges as well. How do countries walk a fine line with China when it comes to this without letting China get away with using these human pawns?
Well, we are actually facing a very difficult situation, and your segment discussed what's happening in Anchorage between China and the United States. What we're really seeing is a China which feels that it is powerful enough because of its rising economic power and its rising military power that it can start breaking the rules of international norms. And unless the international community, and especially those who are democracies or those who want to abide by the rule of international law, get together and tell China that there will be consequences, not only in terms of the reactions to these type of incidents, but maybe there will be leverage against China in the economic sphere. You know, China's prosperity in some respects depends on its obligations under the World Trade Organization. There is an area where somehow we have to start thinking about the leverage that the West and other countries can have against China if it continues breaking the international norms on these fundamental principles of human rights, of the rule of law, that countries around the world adhere to.
Okay, and we'll leave it there for now. Professor Errol P. Mendes, thank you so much.